I have got my basket. I have my scissors. Yeah, we need the scissors. And we are heading out to the garden. Yeah, it's actually November, and there are still veggies in the garden. You can actually leave carrots out in the garden and overwinter them as well. But in our case, we will probably end up pulling them later. We have done actually a fair amount of work out here. You never know it, to be honest, because we do tend to leave a lot of the veggies, well, the stems and things in the garden, and we'll turn them over in the spring just to add that extra compostable material. So as you can tell, yeah, they look weird. We're actually going to be doing a canning adventure, and we're going to make beef stew. Yes, beef stew, and it's going in a jar. Now, I've done this before. It's really, really good. Now, I'm also hoping that with this new canner, it's going to be easier. So first things first, we need carrots. So let me yank a bunch of carrots and get them in this basket. That's a carrot. Oh man, I broke the carrots. Oh well. Okay. See this? This is a good way to realize that you failed completely at thinning your carrots. All right, we're gonna go and grab some rosemary from the herb garden. Then we gotta go and wash all these up. This thing looks absolutely a mess because there was a lot of big spiders living in here. But the rosemary, yeah, it grew well. So I'm gonna snip a little bit of this, and then I gotta go warm up these cold, dirty fingers. Well, like I said, we're making beef stew. So I've got a bunch of carrots. This should be enough for 7 jars. And Freddie went out to the garage and got me a whole bunch of potatoes. And of course, we also have our rosemary. Now, what I've got to do first is I've got to wash and peel all of these veggies. Now, whatever doesn't go in jars is actually for dinner tonight as well. So, time to get to work, washing all this up. And then I got to peel them all. Feels like we're canning carrots all over again. All right, let's get this job on the go. Well, everybody, I have peeled and cleaned. I have, what do you call those, like funky fingers? So from here, I do just have to cut them up. Now I'm shooting for about 1/2 inch for all the veggies because I want them a little bit smaller. Because if I want to make soup as well, all I have to do is just add my additions. Now if I'm doing this as a beef stew, I just warm it up. So what we're doing and how I want to use them afterwards and when we're all done, if I cut them all up smaller, it just gives me more options for what I can use them for, without having to go in and chop up all the potatoes and carrots after the fact. So, next job is I'm gonna finish cutting these up, watch a bit more Netflix on the iPad, and then we'll go on to the next step. On to the meat. Now we've got the potatoes, ta-da, and the carrots. Try not to spill, Tammy. So they're gonna just sit there in their water for a little while. But we have to get the meat started before we start chopping up our onions. The reason why is because it needs to get cold. Now, I am not cooking the meat. What we're gonna do is we're gonna dice it up and we're going to sear it in a nice hot frying pan so you get that nice little piece of dark, crispy fabulousness that you can get on meat. Okay, let me take off the piece we're going to have for dinner first, which is this guy right here. I know it's not a huge chunk, but it is just the two of us, and this is the perfect amount for the pair of us to have for dinner. So I'm going to put this away, and then I'm going to show you what we're doing next. So these little roasts, I'm not sure if you remember, but during our one grocery trip, we found those 3 rib roasts that were on a wicked good sale price. And that's what we're using for our stew. So when you prep the meat, I'm going to slice it up into about 1 inch thick, first of all. Then we're going to trim off the thicker little pieces of fat. And then we're going to pop them in the bowl here. And then next step, we're going to brown one side, maybe 2. Kind of really depends. We're just going to cut them up in approximately 1 inch chunks, put them in the bowl here, and then we'll continue on. Okay, so what I've got here is actually one of my heaviest pans. We're going to add a little bit of oil, and we're going to let this start to get nice and hot. Now, we're not going to cook the beef, like I said. We just want to sear it. We just want to sear it so it's got that one side that's, you know, like caramelized, and it just tastes that much better. Okay, here we go. So I'm just going to put a bunch in, and I'm not even going to move them. All right, new cutting board, new knife. Last thing is we need to prep the onions. So it looks like the last onion from the farm I cannot use. Okay. So I pulled a few onions out. We're just going to, I'll show you how I'm going to prep these so you know, and then I'm just going to get along with the job here. Now the onions for doing this is really, really easy. I don't chop them all up into little tiny pieces, nothing like that. It is that. And then we'll just break them up and put them in a bowl. That's all we're doing to the onions. Talk about easy. Let me get this last job done, and then I'm going to show you how all of this is going to come together. So the last job I have to do is take some of the bigger stems off of our rosemary, because we're going to be putting a little bit of rosemary in all of these jars. And yeah, it just needs to be easier. Okay, it is time to pack our jars. So these are the biggest jars that we've worked with together. These are 1 liter jars. So the food will be probably about 2/3 up. But this is what we're putting in our beef stew. We have our onions, our potatoes, our carrots, and we have, our beef. So, oh yeah, sorry, and bay leaves, and a little bit of salt. Now this is actually really quite easy to put together. There's not that much to it. And yeah, aside from the fact that we browned the meat, everything goes in the jars raw. Neat, huh? It'll make its own broth with a little bit of salt, a little bit of rosemary and the bay leaves. And then of course, when you're heating it up and you're making your final stew or soup or whatever, you just, you know, season it to taste after that. So let me get all these in jars and we'll show you how it's done. Okay, first things first, meat. Alrighty, so next we're gonna put the onions on top of the meat because that's where I like the flavor. Now I'm not using all these onions. Part of them is actually for dinner. And yeah, I'll probably drop the odd thing. Now I'm going to put the half a bay leaf in all of these jars now, so that way it's close down to the meat. Now some of these bay leaves are just small, some of them are big, but it works out I want about a leaf that size, so if it's really big, I'll just break it in half. And these all seem to be nice size. Now, the potatoes. I'm gonna use a funnel for the potatoes and the carrots because with my luck, I'll just make a bigger mess. And now the carrots. Doesn't that look fabulous? I'm telling you, it looks great. Okay, we're going to put a little bit of rosemary on the top of all 6 jars. And finally, we're gonna put about a teaspoon of salt in each one of these. Maybe just shy of a teaspoon. There we go. Now the canner is warming up. The kettle is on the boil. So while they are finishing up, I am gonna go wash 6 largemouth lids. Well, it is time for the hot water. So even though everything in here is technically raw, you still need to put the hot water in the jars so you can actually get these in your hot canner. Remember, you can't put cold in cold. Sorry, you can't put cold in hot and vice versa. So you add your hot water, which I'm going to do now. Probably have to boil a little bit more. I'm not sure I'll have quite enough for all of these yet. I can tell you though, when this hot water hits that rosemary, wow, does that ever smell good. All right, I'm gonna boil a little bit more because we still have to get the air out of all these jars. Okay, water's on boiling. Now, this is the same as all the other canning jobs we've ever talked about, guys. You gotta get the air out. See how far that went down just for me using the tool that comes in those handy dandy Bernardin kits? So you gotta get in there, fiddle around. That goes my oven. And you gotta knock the air out. Wow, that rosemary, I just can't get over the smell. There's nothing like fresh rosemary, I tell you. Okay, so while the kettle is finishing up with that last little bit of water we need, I'm gonna get our paper towel and some vinegar so we can clean these properly when we're ready. We're going to wash the rims. Now all of these have a full 1-inch headspace. So that gives them plenty of room because these are gonna process for 1 hour and 30 minutes. A full 90-minute process once it comes up to the proper pressure for my area, which is 10 pounds pressure. So, lid, ring, finger tight. Don't crank it on, remember? Because if you crank them, especially on something that's going to can this long and the lid buckles, be prepared to have beef stew for dinner. All right, folks, I'm going to pop these in the canner. I can get 6 of these in this canner. I was hoping for 7 because I was really, really off. And these are wide mouth lids, so they are popping as I pop them on. They happen. It's not a big deal. No, they're not bad. That's just noise they make. Wide mouth lids are a little bit noisier. All right, let me get these in the canner and I'll show you what it looks like. Okay, so all 6 jars are in the canner. Now, there's extra water in the canner because follow your canner's directions. When you're canning something that has meat in it, you have to can it for a long time. So the extra water just ensures your canner does not go dry. So I'm going to put the lid on, get this up to pressure, and I'll show you what they look like when they come out. I swear, the longest wait in the world is waiting for that to go down to 0. It's almost done. And then we can take the lid off. Probably. Probably not till about 7:30 I'll take that lid off. Now I could have easily had this done by noon, but to be honest, I took my time today. I didn't even go out and pull those carrots until what? 11 o'clock, I think. Mind you, I slept last night. It was a great night. Today is officially my Saturday. I slept in. Well, I suppose for everybody else it would be sleeping in. For me, it was the regular 7.5 hours worth of sleep. So it's almost done. It's not quite 7:30, but it's ready to open up. So let me make sure that we have 6 intact jars. I hope so. Okay, weight off. Are we ready? The big reveal. I'm actually nervous to open this. This is my first long canning job in this canner. Woo! 6 jars still in one piece. Yes. All right, so let's pull one out. Let's take a look. Oh, they are still bubbling a bit. We've had some siphoning, guys. We have happy pings. Did you hear that? Woohoo! Ping! Ping! Check it out. Beef stew. Well, we did have some siphoning, but not too bad. This new canner works so much better. And I know I wanted the smaller pieces, so now I'm kicking myself because I think those potatoes were a bit too small. But quality-wise, that looks fabulous. We'll check to make sure everybody has sealed. Now they all popped. You heard the pings. Happy pings. So we'll check them in the morning. We'll make sure that we have a completed meal in a jar. Well, the beef stew, fabulous success. So, ta-da! We have actually had one already because we really wanted to try it out, and amazingly, it came out so good. We were thoroughly impressed. Now, in that video, I did worry about the size of the potatoes, and to be honest with you, I did not need to worry. They were not mushy, they didn't fall apart, they had a good texture. They're the same potatoes that we used to can actual just potatoes last year. And we're gonna be doing that again, of course, because I got a lot of potatoes. And canned potatoes just make home fries so much easier, but that's a tangent. Anyway, so what I did is the jars themselves, they sat on the counter for 24 hours. We test the seal on all of them and perfectly good. Not a single fail. I was thoroughly impressed, but I did have a fail, and that was I actually filled the jars too much. Now, I originally was thinking I was going to get 7 jars. For some reason in my head, I thought I could get 7 1-liter jars in that canner, but it was only 6. So there was actually too many potatoes and carrots, but that's okay. I mean, it's a pretty hearty meal for 2 people. Now, that specific recipe itself, like I said, I just had the beef, which I seared. Great flavor, by the way. Onions, potatoes, carrots, rosemary, bay leaf, and a little bit of salt. That's all that's in those jars. When we made the beef stew, I added extra water just because, like I said, I filled them too much. It happens. And it turned out great. Now, if you're going to do stew or soup or whatever, remember, you can't put noodles, you can't put rice, nothing like that. If you can't thicken it beforehand, you thicken it afterwards. If we're gonna do a recipe, we gotta do the safe canning recipes, and that means no pastas, no noodles, no rices, no grains, okay? I am a big stickler on following the safe canning practices. I've seen, oh my gosh, I've seen people can things and I'm like, what? I've seen some questionable canning. If you guys see a recipe or something that you're curious about, go to Ball, go to Bernardin, go to the National Center for Home Food Preservation. If it's not there, I probably would think twice. That was the beef stew in the new canner. And I have to admit, it came out pretty good. So, yeah. Now I have to worry about and work on figuring out an actual pantry space for the jars, because my jars are everywhere. Well, that's it for this canning adventure. That was our beef stew. So we have a meal in the jar. We're gonna make some more meals in jars later on. I'm just not 100% sure what we're gonna make yet, but if you get a canner, give it a try. It's time consuming, but one of the easiest recipes for a proper full meal that I've found. Alrighty, everybody, that's it for me for this canning adventure. Beef stew is beyond easy to make. So if you want to get into a good pressure canning recipe and you just don't want to do veggies, look up the beef stew, and yeah, I'll link it below. Actually, I'll link whatever runs I can find on our 3 safe canning sites, Ball, Bernardin, and the National Center for Home Food Preservation. So go ahead, click that like button, hit that subscribe button. That's me and Yuki right there, and that's our last canning adventure together. And we'll see you next time as we continue canning on our simpler life here on PEI. Bye for now.